Well, this is definitely a change. It's not too often that Tom and I actually get to sit together and actually do a live video together. That's a rare treat for us. And here we are in beautiful San Francisco, just across the bay from Oakland, where yesterday Tom and I joined California RSOL and wore in a public demonstration against international Megan's Law. And we got there 6:30 in the morning yesterday. I'm sure some of you people have seen the footage already from ABC 10 covered us. We were in Courthouse News Service this morning as well. There's video and a regular story both on ABC 10 in Sacramento. So we'll just jump right into it. So Tom, give me your first impressions of how the events unfolded yesterday.
I'd like to do that, Derek. I was really impressed with the whole process. We got there early in the morning. There at the federal courthouse and federal building generally, so it had a huge courtyard to deal with. We got there early, around 7 o'clock it seems like, maybe 7:15 that area, and got set up with our big yellow signs, our big red sign, that's a 4-foot by 8-foot sign, billboard type sign, and a black one, different messages on each one obviously. And we were all set up and running by about 7:30. Just in time for the federal employees and other people who were going to work to come through that area and to take in those very bold messages of repeal the sex offender law and all kinds of other things. I think we had if it were a website that we were, then we probably had about 400, maybe 450 hits during the time that we were there, maybe more, it's hard to say, but it was a good website in physical form, if you want to call it a website.
Right. Well, we got there awfully early too. It was 6:30 in the morning here on the West Coast when we started setting up. I think you went over to Starbucks and got us something nice and warm because it's actually pretty cold out here on the bay. And as we're setting up, one individual in particular sort of came over and he was really offended, not by the signage we were putting up, but by the fact that we were flying a American flag upside down. And he was, I guess, a military veteran or something. I mean, he asked me specifically if I was a veteran, and I told him no, and he said, and I tried to explain to him that flying the flag upside down is a symbol of distress, and he was very upset and started yelling.
We called him Mr. Semper Fi, and he's a courageous guy, a patriotic guy, and he's been taught to absolutely respect the United States flag. And I tried to explain to him, long after Derek had tried, that yes, in fact, an upside down flag with the ensign on the bottom of the American flag is a sign of distress, and it's not a sign of disrespect. So he didn't understand that. Apparently his training wasn't as complete as maybe it should have been. But we continue to hold that flag in that position, an upside down. Some call it a false flag or a distressed flag, meaning something's amiss, something's wrong. And yes, indeed, something is wrong. And the reason we were there is to protest and make public awareness of the International Megan's Law, which is a law signed into law officially by President Obama just a few months ago. It's being challenged by Janice Bellucci in a federal court case there at the courthouse. And we were glad to be there to help support her efforts. Maybe Derek can talk about International Megan's Law.
Right. Well, for anybody who's watching who's not really familiar with what's going on, International Megan's Law was passed in February of this year. And what it essentially does, among other things, is it puts the passport stamps on registered citizen passports, of course, and we can see where that would be a potential problem because, as we said, it's pretty unprecedented that any nation, except for Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, to mark the passports of any of their citizens. And so obviously this is a very disturbing thing, and it just so happened that today, yesterday when it happened, which was July 27th, was also the 10-year anniversary of the AWA, so it was a very significant day. And during that morning there was a court hearing, and the state, or the feds, I should say, the federal government, the Justice Department attorney basically said that there's no harm in and adding and making the information that's already public more visible. Obviously, she hasn't experienced a mark of infamy before, so for her to say such a thing is sort of ridiculous. Now, there are people who came and they went inside the courtroom, to show their support, but a number of us, we also had to stay outside and keep a hold of everything. Tom and I, we pretty much stayed outside the entire time. We can't say what went on inside the courtroom. You'll have to get the word from Janice Bellucci at the California RSOL website. But
now, are you finished with that? Or?
Yeah, we can go ahead and say.
I was going to talk about in support of what Janice Bellucci was doing. We had two major big signs. These are the big 4-foot by 8-foot signs, and the red sign, and we'll put that on the screen here in a moment, is one that dealt with the International Megan's Law and our protest of it. Derek had created the design of both of these big 4-foot by 8-foot panels, the red one, the black one. The red one I'm talking about now is one that had a panel for the Nazi Germany of the 1930s, a 1970s Soviet Union panel, and the third panel was the United States current 2016 panel. But each of these panels had a commonality, and that was that Nazi Germany in the 30s and Soviet Union in the 70s, and now we in the United States today in 2016 all share a common special markings on passports. In Germany, in the 1930s, Germany was a J identifier on the passports of Jewish citizens of Germany, and other markings for other categories of citizens of that time. In the Soviet Union, 1970s, it was the Jews there also for their passports as Soviet citizens. But in the United States, it isn't Jews, it isn't gypsies, it isn't other people, maybe any number of people that I suppose if we were more of a fascist state might have those markings. We're the first, a S marking indicating a sex offender status on an international, or that is a passport to be used internationally, identifying us just like the Jews of Soviet Union and Germany.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this: we've done a few of these protests now, and we've done them in Florida and New York, now here in California. You sort of keep an informal count in your mind, more or less, of cheers versus jeers, or yays versus boos, however you want to put it. People who support us versus people who kind of tell us off or whatever. Did you have a count, and if not, did you just sort of give a general estimation of how you think the balance was tilted in our favor or not in our favor as far as the people coming in and out of the building?
I think it was neutral. I think there was derision and a wrinkling of the nose, or maybe a wry comment. But then approval too. I had one or two people come up to me and said, "Thank you for being out here. You need to do this. These things need to be told to the public in the ever rightward march of our politics in the nation today." So overall, I give it a balance. But I'm going to say this. I'm going to say that the balance, that is the 50-50 split between those that supported us, that is strangers passing by, and those that didn't seem to agree with us. I would say it's 50-50, but that's an improvement over maybe what we would have experienced maybe even 2 years ago, where I think it would have been a lot more negative. So the scales are tilting in our favor. I think 50-50 would be my opinion.
One thing I seem to notice, because you and I, we've done a couple rallies, and of course we tend to draw very small numbers, and even this one, a couple of dozen maybe showed up. Which of course compared to many of the other ones we've done there, that's a pretty good number. But what I noticed is that the more people that were out there that were joining us in holding the signs and banners and whatnot, the more favorable responses we were getting. So that sort of surprised me, because when we first got out there in the morning, I would say it was 50-50, but me personally, as the day went on, and and everybody was out there at the time, and things were getting busy, and the news media was out there filming people and interviewing them, and people were holding up the signs and doing the things that we did. I think we, at one point, California RSOL members symbolically burned registration cards or whatever. I just saw a big turnaround in how people were reacting to us, because there was a lot more of us out there and people were responding more positively. I think there was only there was 3 or 4 instances that I can think of where I saw negativity. Semper Fi guy, of course, was the first one. There was a second guy who, the jogger, jogging in place while talking to me. And, he kind of kept going back to the rare kidnapping thing scenario. He was just so obsessed with the rare kidnapping and the so-called high reoffense rates. And then a couple of other people who made snarky remarks, which I think one of them ended up being what was the term that I used earlier today to describe her? The crisis, the crisis actor. She cried on demand for the news camera, and of course, if you watch the Channel 10 video, you'll see it. But other than that, I thought it was pretty positive. I mean, a lot of people did come and get information. We passed out a dozen of these flyers with, we were I got to the point where it was getting so busy, I didn't have time to do the little stamping routine that we were doing with the flyers. So that's my take on it. Is there anything else you feel you need to add?
Well, yeah, I'd like to talk about the other sign, and you'll put that up on the screen about now as I talk to the audience looking at this video, and that is the black sign. This, again, is another 4-foot by 8-foot panel, and that panel contained the other side of the story, which was government blacklists, and specifically the sex offender registration blacklist or list, and it's causing oppression, or it's being a not just oppressive, but a persecution type list. I think we can call it that now. It's not just that it's a legal inconvenience like the government likes to say that it might be as a cost to us, but also I think we can say that it is a political persecution. It's irresponsible government persecution of innocent citizens. That is, we're innocent because we paid our debt to society. And what comes out of all that is vigilantism. And vigilantism happens now and then, but I think both coasts of the United States over the last 10 years, including the central part of the country, now and then you hear about a case where somebody injures or kills a registered citizen or a registered family member. And so we had a dedication in a photo, a remembrance of Gary Blanton from way back. I think he was murdered in 2012 up in Port Angeles, Washington. And we want to remember him. We didn't know him, but we got to know his wife and interviewed her on some other projects back then. But that's just one case out of many. So we're here today to remember or refer back to that time and other deaths that they had of people that have been murdered by vigilantes. I want to say one last thing, and that is I want to say on camera that I appreciate very much the efforts of California RSOL, led by Janice Bellucci. I think she's done a marvelous thing in challenging these laws and taking this to the federal court system like we experienced. And she came out, she said that she felt it wasn't a victory, but it just seemed in her mind that because it was taken, she had taken some additional information under advisement, the judge was going to rule on it later, that it might be something positive for us. We don't know for sure, but we're hopeful.
Oh man, the funny thing about doing a live outdoor interviews, you never know when people are going to come around. There's something I really have to bring up though. Since we're on the whole subject of signs and everything, Tom and I, we believe in go big or go home. So we got these giant signs out there, and of course, since we were there early, we didn't have anybody else holding signs. I mean, most everybody else was coming at 8 o'clock. We came at 6:30 in the morning, so we jumped the gun by an hour and a half, which was a good thing because we're getting all these people coming in. Now there was this walkway where you come in, we're this big plaza type area that people have to go through to go to the federal building. Each side there's these tall poles, and Tom took his big signs with various messages on them and put them on. So as you keep walking to the left and to the right, there's a sign, here's another sign, here's another sign. There's 3 or 4 rows back of signs. People have to people are reading them all as they're walking. So even if they didn't see the big sign for whatever reason up front, they would see them as they go along. Well, somebody complained about our signs. I would say it was sometime during the time when after Janice Bellucci had arrived and after she went into the courthouse with her entourage of individuals to go in there to support her. And it was just me and Tom and one other person. Department of Homeland Security, apparently, who have nothing better to do because they're an organization that really doesn't need to exist as far as I'm concerned, come out and started threatening us to take these signs off the poles or they're going to confiscate them. And they sounded threatening in doing so, and they lurked around for about 15-20 minutes waiting on us, and eventually we sort of caved in because the signs are kind of expensive. Did they say anything to you specifically? Because I kind of got into it with
Only them. It was just almost a pencil-pushing bureaucrat wearing a badge, a uniformed badge, who came to make sure that every letter of the law was obeyed and enforced, and asked us to unbungee the signs we had put around lampposts. We could hold them and have them lean up against our bodies, but not touch any of the government property. A completely over the top effort to shut down free speech. We weren't harming any of the government property. If we lived in a real democratic society, that would not have happened. But again, we live in a police state today where the law enforcement, especially Homeland Security, I call it worthless security, came by and had us, take our signs off of the government property.
Well, while you were taking the signs down, I took over your spot because I was on one side of the road manning the station where we had the brochures and I had the big red sign, but somebody came and kind of took over that for me. And while you went to take the signs down, I was holding the other one, the big black sign up, the Gary Blanton one, and they congregated behind me. And of course, you took a picture, and it should be flashing up on the screen right about now. You took a picture of me, and these three Homeland Security chumps were sitting behind me. Well, after you went to go take care of the signage, this woman comes up and he's talking to the one that's still standing there, and he, and I have to paraphrase here because I don't remember exactly what he says verbatim, but word for word. But he's talking like like he's only speaking to her, but he's talking loud enough to ensure that make sure that I'm hearing it in my ear because he's only 6 to 10 feet behind me, and he says, don't pay any attention to these people because they're crackpots or something along those lines. It just really ticked me off. And
but their job was to harass us, and I've heard about it on internet news elsewhere. Black Lives Matter has experienced it. Other anti-war protesters have experienced. Homeland Security people, maybe there are other agents of the federal government. Their purpose seems to be to harass activists, protesters, and dissenters, and that's what they're doing. It's just part and parcel of the federal harassment of people exercising their First Amendment rights.
Yeah, I want to bring up one final point, and I think we can probably safely put this video away. A lot of times we struggle to get people to come into this thing. We've done enough of these videos now. We've done enough protests over just within the last couple of years. This is probably California RSOL's third or fourth one. This is also mine and Tom's third or fourth one in the last year. How many times have you been beat up, spat at, assaulted in any other way? I mean, in all the times.
Not at all.
Not at all. I mean, what's the worst you've experienced over?
Just people upset. I mean, usually it's a victim's rights advocate of some sort who's very, very upset with the message, my message of repeal the sex offender registry. She is very upset. She'll argue with me. After 5 minutes, she's gone. Most people, they may say they don't like it. They may gesture to me in a rude way. But other than that, that's perfectly the limit of it. It's really nothing much.
Yeah. Well, of course, most people know my worst experience was in New York because I'm getting sued by Parents for Megan's Law. But that's because they're an organization that likes to bully and try to silence people. Obviously, we experienced nothing like that this time around. Obviously, the Department of Homeland Security, even if they think we're kooks and crackpots, they didn't really do anything else besides tell us to take the signs off the poles.
Nobody was wrestled to the ground. Nobody was handcuffed. Nobody was beaten with a club.
Nobody was even close to really intimidating us. I mean, maybe Semper Fi was a little, he was a little jacked, but he wasn't really threatening. He didn't threaten to kick my ass. Supposedly, from what I've heard, that I think you told me that Janice had mentioned something that somebody was sitting in Starbucks and said they was going to come over and do something.
Well, that was Janice herself, who had watched us from Starbucks as we set up, and those individuals were in Starbucks at the time, and they were saying out loud they're going to go beat those guys up. And they did come over, looked at us, gave us a hard time verbally, but that was it. Mostly upset with a distressed American flag. That was the whole bit. It only lasted a minute and a half, and they were gone.
Yeah, nothing to say about the Soviet flag or any of the other signs. But anyway, overall, how do you rate this experience, the protest?
Well, we should start rating them on a 10 scale, right? So 5 would be in the middle, roughly. So let's give this a 7. This is a pretty good one. We had about 25 people show up. Good responses. Derek and others were interviewed by the local television station, which ABC, the local ABC affiliate. I hope it goes beyond local coverage, and a few reporters and a few of our own criminal justice videographers were there too, which several of us were interviewed. So pretty good. I give it a 7. I'm going to hold out for a 10. I think a 10 is still out there somewhere. A 10 will be when we have about 100 people out with us, all kinds of signs and ruckus on the street and so forth. And I'm holding out the 10 for that. But right now, a 7's a lot higher than we've had. I give it 7 is the best we've had so far.
Yeah, I would give it an 8. I mean, I thought it was really good. The one thing is, we've got, come on, let's be honest. I mean, our movement isn't the most conjoined movement. We all have our different goals and motivations. We all have our different philosophies. But, it was really great to bring a bunch of people together, come all the way out from Ohio to come to a place I've never been to before, and to meet people that I never really see, and and I was encouraged by that. As there was a couple of individuals that came yesterday who never really did these things before, and and as a matter of fact, one of them offhand I can think of actually had given us problems in the past about being out public, and we've kind of changed his mind, and that was really encouraging to me. Now, Janice said it was 40 people. The thing about it is, if there was, there may have been 40 people, because I don't know who went inside the courthouse with Janice. There was possibility that there was people who showed up just to go in and show their support in the courtroom, but was afraid to be out there. And we want to try to ensure people that there's really nothing to be afraid of. We've done this. Maybe people get a little angry. Maybe somebody, flips you the birdie or whatever. But I haven't gotten smacked around yet. And I thought the experience was really good. I thought the signs were wonderful. The news media coverage was there. It wasn't just ABC 10 and Courthouse News. It was also 2 documentary film crews were out there. So it's going to continue, just like with the Rally and Tally last year. We ended up in another film. This one's probably going to end up in one as well. I don't know the nature of how it's all going to turn out, but obviously, I would say it was, I would love to have 100 people out there. We're working on that. We're getting, hopefully this will encourage those of you who have been straddling the fence about this to get out there and do it.
I agree. We'll see you next time, hopefully.
Yeah. Better be out there next time. We brought the signage, so we'll bring the signs, you just bring the bodies.